Hey, this is Michael Kramer.
This is Sarah Nofke.
Hey guys, this is Ernie Howard.
Hey, this is Scott Moon, and you're listening to 30 Minute
Author Interviews with Preston Lay.
Woohoo!
Hey everybody, welcome to this week's episode of 30 Minute Author Interviews. We do have a great giveaway with this episode, but before I tell you about the giveaway, let me tell you about our sponsor, The Galactic Satori Chronicles by Nick Breaker and Paul E. Hicks. The Galactic Satori Chronicles. A thirst for revenge sends one man on a deadly journey through the galaxy in this adrenaline-pumping new series. Asher is a young man whose world is turned upside down when he discovers that his fiancée's death has been directly caused by an imminent alien invasion. In a desire to better understand humans in order to destroy them, these aliens are projecting their consciousness into unsuspecting men and women, and in the process are learning exactly how to use humanity's own selfishness and greed as weapons against them. Fueled by emotions that the aliens will never understand, Asher bands together with a group of friends. These four MIT co-eds are more than meets the eye and go to battle with those who are intent on destroying our planet. Asher takes the fight from Earth to an alien spaceship and then to the very planet of the enemy trying to destroy them. The Galactic Satori Chronicles can be found on Amazon, where Book 1 Earth is only 99 cents and Book 2 Kron is $2.99. Head on over to Amazon and search for Galactic Satori Chronicles, or head on over to Leighgendarium.com and check out the show notes for this episode. In the show notes, we will include a link where you can find both Book 1 and Book 2 on Amazon. And now for the giveaway that I was telling you about. Sarah Negovetich would like to give one person the chance to win a copy of any one of her books. How do you get registered for this giveaway? It's simple. Head on over to Leighgendarium.com. That's Leighgendarium. Find the show notes for this episode and let us know in the show notes what was your favorite part of this interview. It's that simple to get registered. Now enjoy our interview with Sarah Negovetich. Welcome everybody to this week's episode of 30 Minute Author Interviews. This week we are joined by author Sarah Negovetich. Thank you for taking time out of your day and coming on. We appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thanks so much for having me.
Not a problem. Well, we like to start each episode here with a segment that we call Two Truths and a Lie. So for those that don't know, my record at this is awful. I am 12 and 25. So I'm not doing very good at this. So I don't have high expectations anymore. But if you could, can you tell us two truths and a lie about yourself?
I will. Okay, here we go. 1, I have lived in 5 different states. 2, I almost went to law school and actually aced the LSAT exam. Or 3, I once had a massive collection of porcelain dolls.
Okay. I really want number 2 to be true, so I'm going to say that one's true, and so I'm going to boil it down to number 1 or 3 is the lie. For some reason, I think you're trying to throw me off with the dolls, because not a lot of people do them, and who really collects them. So I'm going to say that one's true. So I'm going to say you living in 5 states is the lie.
Oh, you were so close.
Was I?
Yeah, it's actually the doll collection.
Ah, darn. I was like, there's no way that one's a lie. There's no way. Oh, well, mark another one down for the lost column, 12 and 26. I got to keep track of it.
I think you get like half credit. Like, you know,
you
were close.
I was close. So you almost went to law school and you passed the LSAT. Why didn't you go to law school?
Yeah, well, because I realized after I got that close that I didn't actually want to be a lawyer. I was just really entranced with the idea of going to law school.
Oh, okay.
I was like, wow, that seems like an awful lot of money to spend on something I don't actually want to do as a career.
Right, exactly. That is hilarious. And so you have lived in 5 states then?
Yes.
So where have you lived? I know you're in Texas now.
Right, Texas. So I grew up in Ohio,
Okay.
and then I lived in Indiana for a while, and then North Carolina, Tennessee, and then now Texas.
Wow. That's pretty cool. You're not an Ohio State fan, are you?
Well, I feel like I have to be. I don't necessarily care one way or the other, to be quite honest with you. But, like, when push comes to shove, like, I'm an Ohio girl, so I kind of have to root for the Buckeyes, right?
Well, that's all for this episode of 30-Minute Author. That's okay. Someone has to like them, I guess. So, that's
it's
funny.
Just me. I'm the only fan.
That's funny. Well, I discovered you at the Roanoke Author Invasion.
Yes.
Oh, that's why I met you. I went back and looked at my Kindle thing. I had thought that I bought your book like a month before, but I actually bought your book in March of 2016.
Wow.
But I don't know how I discovered you. I don't know if you ran a book bub in March of 2016, but somehow I had your book from March of 2016. So I had to correct myself because I told you it had only been like a month. So, but for my readers that don't know who you are or what you do, can you give them a bio on who you are and what you do?
Sure. So I write books. I write young adult books. And they mostly fall under what you would call like the speculative fiction. So things that that haven't actually happened, I should say. You never know what could or might happen.
That's right.
But I have a trilogy out that is a YA dystopian. And then I just recently released a standalone sci-fi.
And that one is called Ghost Code, correct?
Ghost Code, yes.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
I just started it the other night, so I'm not very far into it. But so far, I think I had some dust or something get in my eye near the end of chapter 1. So I was tired.
That first chapter is a doozy.
I was tired. We had moved, so
right. And
there's
like
probably
all the allergies are out right now.
Dust from the boxes, and so my eyes got a little irritated. So, but yeah. Well, before we talk about Ghost Code, can you kind of give the listeners a little synopsis on what, non-spoiler, of course, on what Ghost Code is about?
Sure. So it follows an 18-year-old girl, Viv, and she is terminally ill. And in order to sort of be able to pay off all of her medical bills so her mom is not saddled with massive debt after she dies, she has decided to enroll in a experimental medical sort of situation where she'll be in a coma for a month, and then they'll use her body for research. Basically, she'll be a lab rat, and then she'll be able to pass peacefully instead of sort of wasting away from her illness. And well, not unfortunately, but surprisingly, when her month is up, Viv does not pass peacefully. She dies, or she lives. She wakes up. So she has to kind of deal with that and sort of figure out what it means to be alive when you didn't think you would be.
Where did your idea for this book come from?
Honestly, I have no idea. I thought of the idea for this book really almost about 2 years ago. And I remember where I was. I was at a conference. I was at the DFW Writers Conference. And I was in my room and the idea came to me, and I kid you not, I wrote the whole synopsis for the book. I sat down in like a half an hour and wrote the whole synopsis out. And, thought, what a neat story. But I was in the middle of writing the Acceptance Trilogy, and I really wanted to focus on finishing that before I started a new project. So that one just kind of got shelved a little bit. And over the years, I would, kind of pick it up and toy with it a little bit. But it just wasn't a pressing issue. And so I finally sat down and finished writing it. So it's been so long that I don't know how I got the idea for it.
How was the writing process for that then, since you came up with the idea 2 years ago, but didn't write it, I guess, until recently, since it was just released in May? What was that whole writing process like?
Yeah, it went super fast because then, I had the whole story in my head and I, kind of plotted it out. And then it just kind of sat there and marinated in my head for almost 2 years. So by the time it was, I had time to actually sit down and write the story, I'd been able to think about it so much that writing it just was very quick and easy.
So is this the easiest book then that you've written to date since you got to marinate it for so long?
I think so. Probably the easiest first draft I've ever done. Yeah, I think that's fair.
That's good. So one thing I wanted to make sure that we touched on, so I'm going to ask this one early, is you have an interesting way that you do your characters in your books. You have a lot of diversity in characters. And you touched on this during your live Q&A that you did for the release of Ghost Code. And I just wanted you to be able to touch on how you do your diversity, why you do your diversity. I wanted you to be able to touch on that because I liked your take on it. So if you could you explain the different diversity of characters that you have in books and why you do it?
Sure. So for those who haven't read my books, I do have a lot of non-white main characters. I have, an African-American main character in my first Trilogy series, and I have some LGBT characters. And in the Ghost Code series, the two main characters are Hispanic and Asian. And, I didn't do that intentionally as this is very chic and I need to have diverse characters. But for me, it really represents the world that we live in. When you walk down the street, I'm not confronted with, a world of white. Especially living in Texas, we have such a diverse group of people who live down there. And to me, that's my world. The world I live in has a lot of different ethnicities, and a lot of people who walk life in a different path than I do. And so it's important for me that my books reflect that as well, that I'm showcasing what the world is really like, not just for me, but for a lot of people, for most people. Representation is really important. I think it's important for people to be able to open a book and see someone who's like them. So it makes me happy that I can do that through my books.
I also liked how you mentioned, you said during your live video that it was something to the effect of you purposely don't describe the characters. What was it? You don't describe how they look.
Attributes.
Yeah, because you want people to get their own image in their head. Have you had anybody draw and send you pictures of how they visualized the character and they drew him out?
I haven't, but I have to imagine that people have a lot of different images in their head of who the characters look like. Because I don't put a lot of attention into describing the people physically, because I like to be able to insert myself into a book when I read it. And it's easier to do if the description is kind of vague.
Do you have any challenges when you're writing characters that aren't necessarily like you? Like, since Ghost Code features, you said Hispanic and Asian. Did you have to do research into cultures and stuff like that for your characters?
I didn't do a lot of cultural research for that. For me, the Hispanic culture is very important and very prevalent in Texas, especially where we live. And so I'm exposed to that on a very daily basis. So I didn't really feel like I needed to do research for that because I live that a lot.
Right. Okay.
As far as, the Asian character, I didn't, because for me, it's not like, I need to create this stereotype of an Asian character and, and this is, something that he would say and this is how he would walk or whatever. He's a character and he happens to have Asian ethnicity. But to me, it was more important what his character was as a person as opposed to as an Asian character.
Okay. And as I think you mentioned it earlier, Ghost Code's a standalone novel and Acceptance was a trilogy.
Yes.
Did you have any challenges going from writing a series to writing just a standalone?
No, it's funny because Rite of Rejection, I always intended for that to be a standalone.
Mm-hmm.
So that's, I guess, how most of my stories start in my head. That one only became a trilogy because so many readers reached out to me and said that they needed to know what happened next. So, I guess for me, most of my stories start as standalones. And then if there's more story there, then so be it. And if not, then that's okay. Ghost Code is absolutely standalone, though. There won't be any more.
Okay. Well, before I ask you any more questions about the acceptance books, since Ghost Code just came out, do you happen to have an excerpt from that book that you can read for the listeners so they can kind of hear what the story and your writing style would be like?
I do, but I'll warn you, I picked it from the first chapter, so... That's
okay.
Okay.
I'll have to mess some boxes around real quick, get the allergies going.
Clear the dust out.
That's right.
Okay, so this is the beginning of chapter 1 from Ghost Code. I sit down on the edge of my deathbed and wait for my mother to stop praying. This is her third round of the rosary, and there isn't an end in sight. I tug on the bottom of my black t-shirt and focus on the worn vintage cotton as her voice rises another octave. Mama, I appreciate your prayers, I say, keeping out all but a tiny bit of sarcasm. Is that really how you want to spend our last minutes together? Her voice lifts from a mumbled whisper to a plea loud enough to wake the dead. And protect her soul on its journey from this life to the next. Welcome her spirit into your eternal kingdom in the name of the Father and of the Son and of the Holy Spirit. Amen. Enough already, Mama. She turns to me, her eyes glistening, and it sends a sharp stab of pain to my heart. Mija, prayers are all I have left for you. You are going to lie here and die, and I'm helpless to save my baby girl. I can't stop it, so all I can do is pray. I hop down off the bed and wrap her tiny frame in my arms. She's even smaller than normal. I'm the sick one here. You need to eat something before you waste away to nothing. She holds me back so tight the buttons of her shirt press into my collarbone. Her light floral perfume tickles my nose. I'll eat when you're dead. Oh, there she is. I pull back and smile at the cheeky grin on my mother's face. I was wondering when we'd get to trade in the pity-filled, wallowing mother for the one that taught me to suck it up and take crap from no one. Viv, language! My mother waves a bony finger in my face. I shrug and pull at the bottom of my favorite black t-shirt. You couldn't have worn something a little nicer? What? I smooth my hands across the white screen-printed words. Did you try turning it off and turning it back on? It's kind of appropriate since I'm about to be rebooted. Don't talk like that. You're not so close to the pearly gates that I can't take off my shoe. Mama, mothers don't beat their dying children. Sure they do, she winks at me in the way I'll miss forever. There just aren't any survivors to tell the tale. I can't hold the laughter back, and in seconds we're both nearly doubled over, sending gales of laughter into the tiny sterile room. Then my laugh turns into a cough, and I can't breathe, and we're brought right back to the reality of why I'm here. I'm dying. Now.
Very good. It's such a good chapter.
Thank you.
At least, yeah. I think I'm on chapter 3 now, but yeah. So when you had the idea for this book 2 years ago, did you just have the story idea, or did you picture this scene when you first came up with the story idea?
I do. I always, for some reason in my head, my stories always start with the first scene. I'm always able to visualize that very clearly, and also the final scene. So for me, if I can't picture those in my head and what they look like, then I can't even begin to write the middle part. So I knew exactly what would happen in the beginning here. I pictured, them being in this, very sterile hospital room and her basically facing her death head on.
I can't wait to see how the story ends. I know that I asked you during your live chat if you're going to do buttons for this book, because you have buttons that you did for the Acceptance Trilogy that I have actually on my bag that I take with me everywhere to work and church and everything that says Proud Reject. I have that on my bag. Have you come up with a button idea for this one yet? I know you said the book's full of spoiler stuff, so have you come up with a non-spoiler one?
Yeah, there's a lot of spoiler stuff that happens pretty quickly in the book. So I mentioned in this first chapter, she has this T-shirt that's her favorite T-shirt that has the saying, "Did you try turning it off and turning it back on?" And while that doesn't mean a lot if you haven't read the book yet, if you have, it kind of has a slightly deeper, more significance. So I think that those would make appropriate buttons.
That would. And if you do, I want one.
Okay, you got it.
So I can put on my bag. And I also like the bookmark you did for your Acceptance Trilogy that has the hole punched out in the corner with the little logo on it. I thought that was a cool touch too. So Ghost Code is out now. I think you should turn it to an audiobook and you should read it yourself. Just my opinion.
I think I will leave that to the professionals.
There you go. So just for, like we mentioned, you have another series called the Acceptance Trilogy. Can you tell people where your idea for that came on? I want you to be able to talk about that trilogy as well.
Sure. So I actually do remember this one. There was a pretty horrific crime in the city that I lived in, which I live in a very small, middle of nowhere Texas town. So when bad things happen, it's all anyone can talk about. And so there was an instance where a man, unfortunately, kidnapped his family and killed many of them. Which is horrific. I mean, just really just an awful crime. And one of the things that kept being said over and over again were, from all of his neighbors and the people that knew him, they said, "I just can't believe that he would do this. He always seemed like such a nice man. I can't believe that he was capable of doing something like this." And so, I started thinking, well, what if we could know that somebody would do something like this? What would we do and what would that look like? And if we had that kind of power, how would that play out? And would that ever be corrupted? And so that's where I got the idea for the world that the Acceptance series is based in.
One of my favorite parts of book one, Rite of Rejection, is it's in the very beginning, and it's when they are shopping for their dance cards, and the main character goes towards a section of the store where the old school dance cards kind of are, not the electronic kind with all the whoop-de-doos on it. You had a line in there that I absolutely love, and I wish I had my Kindle with me so I could read it exactly, but it's the part where...
Let me see if I can find it.
It's the part where she says something to the effect of, she finds it unromantic, asking someone to dance the way that you pay for your lunch or something and clock in for work. Something like, I love that line that you put there. Where did your idea for, did you know about dance cards when you were writing the story and just decided to put it in there?
I did. So for this book, I wanted to kind of set this world as having returned to what we all call the good old days, back in the good old days. And so, I did some research into lifestyles and things like that, and in different decades, because everybody's good old days is a little different. So I kind of picked and chose different aspects of, different decades throughout time, and ran across the dance card and just thought that was too perfect to pass up.
It's such a cool scene and a good way to open your book. It's a very fun book. I want to ask you something else, but before I ask you that, can you let people know, non-spoiler, what that series is about?
Sure. So this series follows Rebecca, who lives in a future society that, like I mentioned, has kind of returned to simpler times, but in which they are able to determine if someone will commit a crime in the future. And Rebecca is going to a ceremony, which is basically where everyone, when they are 16, they either get accepted into society, or if the machine determines that they will be a future criminal, then they are sent away to basically a prison camp. And our main character finds herself rejected and has to really do some deep digging and determine who she really thinks she is, and decide how much freedom is worth to her.
I don't want to give too much away, but I do want to ask one question about her.
Sure.
You really see her in this book go from naive to not naive anymore, to seeing how things really are. I hope that doesn't give too much away.
No, that's fair.
Did you? What was that process like writing that? Did you know kind of how her transition was going to go, or is that something that you discovered along the way?
No, I did. So I'm a big fan of the Hunger Games. I love that series. But but one of the things that I've always thought was interesting about that series is that the main character, Katniss, really starts out strong. Mm-hmm. She was strong from the very beginning, and we saw that through her flashbacks and everything like that. And so sometimes her choices weren't surprising because, she's always been strong. And so I very intentionally thought, well, what if you had a character thrust in this situation who wasn't strong, who was absolutely not cut out for this sort of, life and becoming a criminal, and what would that do to her? And, how would that impact her? And so I very intentionally made her, really a wet rag in the beginning of the book.
Yeah, you can say that. Yep, you sure did. And one of the other things that I love that you did with this series is but the time frame between book 1 and book 2 is 24 hours, but you went back and you did a novella that you can only get through your newsletter, which I think is great. I just love that idea. And you said that this was originally scheduled to be a trilogy. So did you write that novella before you wrote book 2, or was this novella afterthought?
No, it's actually, because I had not intended to write more books, when it came time to start the second book, I really struggled with where to start it. I knew what I wanted to happen, but I wasn't sure how to get into it. And like I said, I need to know what that first scene looks like before I can really sink into a book. And so I decided that I would write a scene from every main character's point of view to get into their head and look at what would they have done immediately after the end of book 1. And so I wrote that only to help myself get into the second book, to figure out where I wanted that to go. And when I got done with it, I was like, oh, wow, that's actually really fun and very interesting. Then I think that readers would be interested to hear from those other characters. So, yeah.
How many letters and emails and messages did you get in order to convince you to make it a trilogy instead of just the one book?
Oh, I don't know, but there was a lot. I got a lot of, Facebook messages and emails, and just, people I knew would, email me or call me or see me somewhere and be like, when's the next book coming out? And when I would tell them, oh no, this is it, there's not a next book, I mean, the dirty looks that I would get, they were pretty awful. So, I got a lot. And so I said, well, let me see if there's enough here for more, then I'm happy to write more, but I didn't want to commit to it unless I knew that there was a story there. So I took actually a long time. It was a whole year in between books 1 and 2 being published, because I really wanted to take my time and make sure that there was a story there worth telling.
Well, if I would have only read book 1 when it originally came out and you would have told me there's not more, I think I might have been a little mad too.
I didn't mean to make people mad.
I know that some people like stories where you decide what happens. So if you like that, then get book 1, Rite of Rejection, and then don't read the rest of it. But
right, and then you're good.
That's right, then you're good. Oh, that's too funny. So since you said that most of your stories start out as a standalone, but then you've written the trilogy and now you've written another standalone, do you prefer writing standalones to series, or does it not really matter to you?
I think just every story is a little different. This one, when I really sat down and thought about it, I was like, oh, okay, I can see where this is going to go. I can see that there's more story there. So I think it just kind of depends on, the characters, and it's always fun going back and visiting the characters and spending more time with them. I really fell in love with the characters of the Acceptance series, and, writing that last book was a little bittersweet, knowing that was going to be the end of their story. But as a reader too, I enjoy sometimes just being able to pick up a book and know that book is going to be it. And I can, finish the tale. And so, I enjoy reading both as a reader. So, as an author, I like to try and give a little something for everybody.
I know that you said that you have 2 story ideas in your head for next, but you weren't sure which one you were going to go with. Have you decided what story you're going to be writing next?
I have, and it's actually neither one of those.
Oh, really?
So I was, tossing it up between an urban fantasy and a steampunk. And the more I was tossing them around, and I just wasn't really feeling either one of them. And a new little plot bunny just popped itself into my head and said, "Oh, you should write me." And it was actually a plot bunny for a full trilogy, which is unusual for me.
Oh, wow.
But yeah, the full storyline, 3-book trilogy. And I thought, oh, this is kind of telling me I have to write it now. So it's a fae fantasy, somewhat urban, contemporary, but somewhat not. So leave it at that. I don't have any sort of description built up for it yet, but I'm pretty excited about it.
Is it going to be another YA novel?
Yes, it will be YA. Yeah, I just love YA.
You said did you say it was fae fantasy?
Yeah.
What is fae fantasy?
So fae, like the winter and summer, fae.
Okay.
Not fairies. Fairies sounds weird, but but fairies. So fae, yeah.
Okay. Is it FAE? Am I thinking it right?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Yeah. Okay. Had a good clarification there.
Yeah. Good call.
I interviewed Jacob Cooper. He's a fantasy author, and he is writing. Oh, what did he call it? It was some type of nonfiction, but I'd never heard of it before. Creative nonfiction. So I was like, what's creative nonfiction? I had to find that out. So it's basically nonfiction with some fictional elements mixed into it. So,
all right.
Yeah. That's well, here at the Leigendarium and 30-minute author interviews, we are known for a certain question. So the question is, a penguin walks through the door right now wearing a sombrero. What does he say, and why is he here?
Well, I think he obviously says hola. And I'm hoping he's here to take my drink order, a la like Mary Poppins. That would be good. Is he serving up margaritas? I feel like this is an obvious answer, right?
There we go. That works. And do you have any advice, whether it be for writing or for life, that you would like to share with the listeners?
Oh, gosh. So for those of you who are writing, I think like the best advice that I ever got, and it's still true, is finish it. So I know a lot of people are like, oh, well, I kind of toyed with this and I started this and I kind of dabbled in this. Pick something and finish it. Like there's a lot of power in typing the words the end. And even if all the stuff that came before the end is just utter garbage, knowing that you finished something and got to that point is very, very powerful. So finish it.
I guess I need to finish mine that I started over a year ago, and I haven't even touched it in over a year.
Finish it, so Preston. Finish it.
Where can our listeners go if they would like to learn more about you or your stories?
Sure. So they can go to my website, which is sarahnegovetich.com. And my Facebook page is Sarah D. Negovetich. I don't know why, but it is. And so you can find me there as well.
And for those that are curious, Negovetich is spelled Negovetich. So
yeah, it's kind of a mouthful.
But we will put links to everything over in the show notes at Leigendarium.com.
Great.
So, well, thank you for taking time out of your day and coming on 30-minute author interviews. We appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me. This was fun.
It was. That is all the time that we have for this week's episode of 30-Minute Author Interviews. Thank you so much for tuning in, and we hope you tune in next Wednesday and every Wednesday for another great author interview. And don't forget to head on over to Leigendarium.com and find the show notes for this episode. In the show notes, you're going to find the giveaway where Sarah Negovetich is giving one person the chance to win a copy of any one of her books. And in the show notes, you're going to find the link to our sponsor, the Galactic Satori Chronicles. Check them out and let them know that you heard about them right here on 30-Minute Author Interviews. Don't miss another episode of 30-Minute Author Interviews. You can subscribe to 30-Minute Author Interviews on your favorite platform to listen to podcasts, iTunes, Google Play, YouTube, and many others. I would also like to thank a few of our Patreon supporters. I would like to thank Nick Breaker, Third Scribe, and Maggie Stewart Grant. They're supporting 30-Minute Author Interviews through Patreon. They're also receiving the Patreon-only podcast 10 Questions With. Visit patreon.com/Leigendarium and find out how you can support 30-Minute Author Interviews as well. And until next time, guys, remember to stay legendary.